Welcome to the FounderVideo podcast, an interview series bringing you the latest and greatest info on B2B marketing, revenue operations, and go-to-market strategy from respected experts. Here is your host, Will Martin.
All right, diving right in. Chris Ebert's a good friend of mine. He pointed out in meetings, from all levels of oil and gas, like safety topic is a big thing. We kind of got away from it. So I figured since it's the Oil Fibre Leader podcast, we should talk about a safety topic. I figured what better than Will, Christian, and myself, we could do pinch points, because we're kind of in an office setting right now, watch them fingers, watch them toes. If you're wearing them open-toed sandals, I'm not because I'm working today, but if you guys are so lucky, touche. Before we get serious, I can't believe I'm going to hop into this, but you guys watch Netflix, I would imagine, correct? Everybody watches Netflix. Joe Rogan did a live podcast, the first time he's ever done one. So I think it kind of correlates to this because it's the first time that we're kind of diving into like a LinkedIn so to speak,
there you go.
Topic, more so than just oil and gas related. So it's one thing he really pointed out. So I didn't write any notes down, but something stuck with me. And he said a lot of funny stuff, right? But he said his complaint box. And I'm like, what do you... So I'm dived in, right? I'm like, complaint box. And he goes, yeah, this cell phone, right? He's like, so I kid you not, I'll leave my kids at home for hours on end with random people, but I can't leave my complaint box for 5 seconds anywhere. So that was kind of funny. When we can't, right? Our phones are just, I've checked mine since we've been on it. I saw Christian just did, see?
I've got my phone off,
we got Will.
Off
you guys,
and muted.
You guys jump in.
Well, 10-4. So I get really what this is sort of like a free-flowing discussion. Bailey found Will and found one of his posts, and very luckily for all of us, decided to engage Will in some conversation and found out that Will is actually doing some really interesting things in the LinkedIn space. And so we kind of all just, got together and wanted to present to you some of the things that we've got cooking and some of the ideas that we have. And so we've invited Lord Bailey Midkiff, obviously, and Mr. Will Martin of FounderVideo. And Will, could you tell us a little bit about like what you're doing and like how is that different from what other people are doing?
Totally, yeah. So, well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to join the podcast. And I gotta say that you guys found me in the first place through a post, but it was an ad actually. And we'll talk about this later too in depth. But one of the things that we're doing differently than most companies doing advertising or just content on LinkedIn is to, well, first off, we're a video first company. We started doing video for founders and executives, and now we specialize in using that video on LinkedIn ads, but in LinkedIn ads mainly as well, just as a platform. And thanks to LinkedIn, we can now run organic posts as ads with the ad type that's called thought leader ads. And that's one of the things that we're the most bullish on because they really are working pretty great. The last 3 sales calls, they come from people that thought they saw one of my posts organically, but it was an ad. And you guys found me because of a post that actually was an ad. So that's actually part of the magic, that they don't look like ads, right? Other than that, just a LinkedIn ads agency owner, doing LinkedIn on a daily basis to try and get more inbound and whatnot. But that's it.
That's awesome.
That's crazy, awesome. Right? And maybe we should just dive right in. Well, after Christian said that, but yeah, because I honestly did not know it was an ad. And this guy's kind of coming through. So kudos to you. I praise myself to be pretty effective on LinkedIn. So does Mr. Lombardini. But apparently we are not. And it is time to let the Spaniard shine, and like give us some insight, because clearly we're not making it happen nearly as much as we thought we did. Right.
Right. And I think that part of that is because, and now Will, please be kind to Bailey and I. We're a bit of dinosaurs. Even though we're in oil and gas, I guess it's a bit, on the nose. But we are a bit dinosaurs, right? And so I have ideas of what ads should look like, how structures are, but that's all based on like 20th century stuff. Really, it's ancient stuff.
Right. Like
one of the big... Yeah, like websites, like now it's funnels. It's not websites. Can you explain, Will, some of the differences, like some of the major differences that has gone from like, Web 2.0 to Web 3.0? I mean, and maybe even that's pushing it for some of our folks.
Yeah, totally. So I think, and for the oil and gas people as well that are listening, I think this is especially relevant because you don't need to be in the tech or SaaS space to do LinkedIn properly and to benefit from it. Really, there's a lot of B2B industries that are really present on LinkedIn, and oil and gas is one of those. To not go farther, I mean, one of our clients is in the mining industry, and who would have thought, right, that they would be doing LinkedIn marketing and advertising? So, first off, debunk that myth. LinkedIn is for everyone in B2B. It doesn't need to be in the tech or AI space or anything like that. And so that means that it's relevant as well for oil and gas people. As to the biggest shift that I think has happened in the last, call it 10, 15, 20 years, I think we've shifted from website content to social content. So before, most people, where they gather their information in order to make a B2B purchase, would probably, digitally speaking, of course, it would be mainly on a website, right? Like they would go to the website, they would find it through Google Ads, through programmatic advertising, even connected TV, billboards, whatever it may be. And they would go and get educated through blogs, mainly on websites. And that's how content marketing came around, and SEO, and the HubSpot rush of let's all create blog content to drive traffic to our website so that our buyers can get educated, and by the time they're qualified and actually know enough about our solution, can then come to us and ask for a demo or more info or contact sales or buy directly. Well, now the way a buyer goes through their buyer's journey and learns and gathers information and gets informed in order to make a B2B purchase has changed dramatically. And in the first place, that change stops by social content. Social content is one of the pillars of the trifecta, I would say, of where to gather information from for day-to-day, like today's executives in B2B. Social is one, but you also have communities, private communities, and what's called dark social. All of the channels in which we interact with each other that cannot get tracked, that are private and that you cannot get in as an advertiser, that being WhatsApp, Slack, Zoom calls, Microsoft Teams, like all of the channels in which they communicate on a day-to-day basis with their peers, with their team, etc., that you don't get to see. And maybe your name has been mentioned multiple times. Who knows, right? But social is one of them. And therefore, back to the main point, we need to shift from the idea that my potential buyers will get educated through the content that I put up on my website. These days, you see most brands have way more content on their website than in social because they haven't adapted to the shift yet. Whereas, if you want to align with the buyer's journey that we're currently seeing, you need to be on social, and that needs to be your main place. And for B2B, that's usually LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And
that's informative. Dark channels. I never heard that. I'm making note of that.
Right, the dark socials. Yeah, and what? I think that's normally what we would call talking to your friends, right? Like back in the old days, like talking to your friends. Right. But Will brings up a good point, because the situation today is that everything is so commodified and the markets are so splintered that there's advertising on everything. I mean, like, I wouldn't even be surprised if you go to the dentist and he offers you a discount to put Crest, right here on your tooth. I wouldn't be surprised, because marketing is getting that pervasive. So Will brings up a good point that there's the old school channels, which I guess is now called dark social, where really a lot of communication is happening, but it's not being infiltrated by the marketing space. And I think, Will, and to bring back to Bailey what you said, you can put a post. You don't, on LinkedIn, you don't have to click on add, create ad. You can just do a post, and that post is an ad. You're just not propositioning it as such right on the front end, even though that's legitimately what it is when you see it. Does that sound about right?
Totally, yeah. When you are in the campaign manager, instead of creating a new ad from scratch and having to upload a creative and choose your copy and everything, you just browse existing content. That's the bottom name. And when you go in there, you can find LinkedIn members. It doesn't need to be a member associated with the company page that you're usually running the ads from either. So it can be someone from another company that is not yours, that you can put money behind their posts because they're your advisor or ambassador or influencer or whoever it may be, right? So it's really powerful. And again, yeah, I mean, you can tell it is an ad, but the only way you can tell is through is the third line. So you have, when you, and I think we have a slide for that if you want to pull it up so we can kind of like have a visual illustration of it.
Well, this was my next question.
Can...
So this is what I'm talking about. Yeah, because I was like, how can I like pinpoint, oh, Will's getting us in an ad again, right? Or is it just like him like shooting out some intel? What's this like? What's this amazing content? Where did it come from? You know, I think I said it last time on the podcast. I love this word, fugazi. I'm pretty sure I did. Fairy dust doesn't exist. Not on the elemental side.
I love that quote. Yeah, that's such a scene.
I think everybody gets it. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. You can pinpoint it. So if Christian can pull that slide,
the third slide.
It was the fifth.
Okay, fifth. Excellent. Does this look like an ad?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, so as you can see in the image, you'd have, and for the people listening as well, so they can picture it in their minds, when you see a usual LinkedIn post in your feed, you're going to have the personal profile picture, then the name. Below the name, you have the headline. Below the headline, if it's a premium profile, someone can, like the owner of the profile can embed a link with a call to action, whether that is book an appointment, visit my website, visit my portfolio. You can customize the text. And then if it's a thought leader ad, meaning a personal profile post run as an ad, you will see that it says promoted by and the name of the company. In this case, it says promoted by FounderVideo. But other than that, it is just like the organic post. You even have the interactions and comments show up with it. Right? It will look undistinguishable for people, right? And that's what usually happens. Most people. Yeah, you can. It's really crazy. You can compare it to, when you search up on Google and the first results that you get are always sponsored. Most people now, I think, know at this point that those are ads. But right when they're started, most people would click there because it's the first result, and they wouldn't even intuitively they would click there because it's the first results, and that's what you've done so far. Now they're ads. Oh, who cares, right? Am I? They're personalized to my experience, so it's probably the best results either. Most likely, it might not be right at this point. But like, if there's people that don't know that those first results on Google are ads, imagine this, right? Like this comes by straight up as an organic post. And with my content, we're making a lot of people aware at this point, but hey, I don't think I reach enough people for this to not be this way for a long time. Right. So yeah.
Well, that's fantastic, and I can see here that I think we lost Bailey. He's been having some internet problems this morning, but he'll be back. It's all right. So, taking a look at this, so you're right. If the information is valuable, right? If the information is valuable, the information is valuable. Whether it's packaged as an ad or it's packaged as a post, it really doesn't matter. I think that sort of like a Trojan horse, right? You're bringing in an advertisement, but it's like a post. But as you said, it allows a lot of people to get interactive with it, to comment on it, to forward it to other people, and kind of create, a value add on the ad itself. Is that one of the takeaways that you get from doing this way?
Totally. Yeah. It's just providing the user with an experience that feels natural with them and that aligns with what they're accustomed to, right? Like people don't get on social to get a video of your latest product update, or to get a video of, for the oil and gas industry, maybe a video of, who knows, like machinery, right? The new machinery you install in your factory, whatever it may be. Those are not things that people care about, right? We got to shift as well. Like the shift from website content to social content requires you to go from being company centric to customer centric. That's enough.
That's interesting. Like, can you repeat that?
Yeah. So the shift from website content to social content also requires you to shift from being company centric to being customer centric. Because before, if we're honest, most of the companies in B2B, most importantly, they used to hold all of the power in the buying relationship. Now it's the other way around. who holds the most power is the buyer. The buyer can get to know everything and more about your product without having to talk to your sales team at this point. Before, like 15, 20 years before, it wasn't like that. Not as much. And you see it, I mean, in 2020, 2021, especially the SaaS space, you could see, sales reps knowing less about their product than the user itself, because the user, like the prospect already has done the research and has access to all of these sources of information that before companies were able to gatekeep. And this is still true for a lot of more traditional B2B industries like oil and gas, right? Like there's a lot of gatekeeping when it comes to information. There's a lot of holding the upper hand and not wanting to give it away. And we got to understand that if having buyers in control scares you, is because you're not good enough to make them come to you. That's
brilliant.
It's tough. It's a hard pill to swallow for most, but it's how it is. And look, I've gone through it as well. When I started posting on LinkedIn, I spent 6 months, nothing was happening. Like, posting every day, commenting every day, engaging with people every day, sending DMs every day. And 4 months, nothing happened. 4 or 5 months, the first 4 or 5 months. All of a sudden, I started the podcast. I started posting clips with people that were recognized in my niche, and I started to get way more engagement and people visiting my profile and new followers, and all of the work started to pan out. But it's really hard to accept that, of course, the upper hand is on the other side. But the sooner you accept it, the sooner you will come around to the things that will make you understand how their upper hand can play to your benefit.
How their upper hand can play to your benefit. That's interesting. One of the conversations I have with my mother, who's 80 plus, is that I tell her that because there's so much information available everywhere, that if you call like your local utility to ask them a question, chances are the person who answers the phone is going to have some disdain for you, because you're asking such basic questions that you could have found out for yourself by a myriad of methods. And therefore, I guess even at that, like you say, if the customer knows more than the salespeople about what they want, generally speaking, right, then the salesperson at that point is expecting the consumer to be well educated and have some very pointed questions, like very specific questions regarding that. But in oil and gas, it doesn't quite work that way, because there's so many facets to that industry and so many different things that are, that are traded. Bailey, and we want to thank all of our guests and watchers right now and viewers. Bailey's been having some issues with his internet, but he's working on it at a furious pace. If you can hear him clacking it away. But let me ask a question, Will. So I love what you said, right? That the website was more about being company-centric, and then the social is being more customer-centric. But with the advent in the last few years, again, of the commodification and monetization of the social networks, what's the next phase? Or what's the next iteration from here and from today?
That's a really good question, but I would like you to clarify, what do you mean by the commoditization and the what did you say about
the
social
commodification
media?
and monetization thereof?
Yeah.
What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that the markets have become very matured, in the sense that, like, at the beginning, YouTube was just cat videos and whatever, and then over time it became much more professionalized. It became professionalized to the point where really sometimes only corporate creators or creators with a lot of money can get their content out, because there's so much competition in the space. So that's what I mean is, if everything in social media is starting to look the same, say, right, like you have to have this reel, you have to have this, you have to have that. Well, what's the next iteration? What's going to come after that? Because eventually that market will also be saturated, and people are going to be looking for the new avenue, the new media, or the new medium.
Yeah, really, really good question. Really well phrased. I think, the problem is that the people that look for those iterations and look for that next media, that next medium, that next strategy, new thing, whatever, they will never succeed in social media, and they usually don't succeed in anything at all. That's the truth. Why? Because the game of social media, it's to be won by all of the people that are already winning in the real world, in my opinion. Truth is, if you're the kind of person that is debating themselves, and look, I don't blame you for it. I've debated myself on this too at the beginning when I started creating content. It's like, oh, what do I talk about? I don't have anything to offer to the world. Most likely a lot of people, when they do that inner job of like looking inside and like, what do I have to offer to the world, a lot of times it might not be as good. Like you start comparing yourself to other creators, like, oh, the bar is so high, I will never be able to reach that point. And well, look, first off, you got to understand the internet is decentralized, right? So, and that's a really good thing. It doesn't matter that that there are creators that are miles away from your level of information, knowledge, way of communication, whatever it may be. It doesn't matter because a lot of people probably don't know about them, and they can discover you first. So that's a good thing that to keep in mind, that there's not such thing as a directory that you used to have and that you still have in the real world for like, all of the companies in this industry. You go to an avenue and, before the internet and before everything, you could find where all of the fashion stores were in your city. You just had to go to that street and there you go, right? In the internet, there's no such thing as a directory where you can find the creators, right? So it's all scattered, and that's a good thing because it provides the opportunity for up-and-comers to get their own piece of the pie, right? So, and that's first. Second, it's when you start thinking about what should I be talking about, the only thing you're going to find are answers that are meant to be one size fits all. And the truth is there's no such thing as a one size fits all answer for what you should talk about, even to the industry or niche level. It's like you cannot say, oh, if you're in marketing, start talking about this, and that. You could say that. There's a lot of people that say that, but the problem is if you follow that advice, you start sounding like the 10 other guys who followed it. So what you should do instead, because people, okay, well then what the fuck do I talk about, right? Well, you should talk about what you're going through, because that's the only thing that nobody else will be able to do. And it may sound hard. It may sound, a lot of people have a lot of insecurities with that and like, oh, but is it really going to be interesting? Got to bear in mind what's obvious to you. It's like a super big realization for other people. And you never know, like there's always someone that you're going to match with in your journey. So you just need to be real about it, because that's what's going to make your content unique and actually work. That's what people aim for, and that's what people want to see in social media. Authenticity, things that are not to be replicated, and things that are actually novel, not new, novel, right? You want to be known well, not well known. Right. That's kind of like the phrase that embodies it.
No, those are really great points.
This podcast is brought to you by FounderVideo. We'll cut your LinkedIn ads costs by at least 50% with natural-looking creatives that prospects actually want to consume. Just have an expert in your C-suite show up to a 90-minute interview once a month and let us take care of the rest. Turn LinkedIn ads from an accepted line item expense into a scalable revenue channel that fits into your go-to-market strategy. Book a free consultation at foundervideo.io.
And I think that for anyone who would either aspire to be a creator or and even not so much be a creator, but enter the space, right? And for marketing or for ads, it's the same thing. Everything for marketing and sales, it falls into what the rubric that Will just said, because it is so decentralized. There is no way that you're going to, look small in the shadow of the 800-pound gorilla, in the room, because again, it's very decentralized. So one of the things that has always kind of interested me, and you referenced it, is that Gary Vaynerchuk, he also says, don't try to create, just document what you're doing, because that goes to what you said. It is each individual's unique journey. So it's novel in that sense. It's not new, because we all have journeys we're working on, but it's novel to see the way that someone else is approaching it. One of the frequent things also that I get, and it speaks right to what you were saying, oh, okay, what should I talk about? Can I speak to this? Can I speak to this? And one of the big things that a lot of people have is what's called imposter syndrome. And I sort of took this idea intellectually and I spun it around in my head. And then I realized the one thing that just absolutely shattered it and blew it apart, which is this. Now, I may not be the most intelligent on my subject. I may not be the most passionate about my subject. I may not know everything that there is to know. But the one thing that I have, and there may be other people that know way more than I do, but the one thing that I have is that at least I have the guts to turn on a camera and talk about it in public. And so that's my defining feature, and that's why I do not have imposter syndrome, because of all the people who may know better, I'm the one that's doing it. So you can't take that away from me. And my individual perspective and the culmination of my experiences and ideas and my IP, my intellectual property, that's mine. No one can tell me that my IP or my ideas are wrong. So I think that some people really have to let go of trying to posture. If they're more authentic, things become a lot easier. What do you say to that? I would invite Bailey to answer, but go, Will. What do you say?
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, that's what it is at the end of the day. You got to be yourself, and you got to have the guts to go and do it. And, there's one, not that I'm the most religious here or anything at all, but there's one verse that I really love that embodies this. That's for all who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. Um, you want to put yourself, portray yourself in social media, not play victim or anything like that, but just be honest with you and be honest with the people you're talking to, which is your audience and the people who might, discover you in their feeds. And you will see how, like, people really appreciate that, because at the end of the day, we're humans to humans, and we like to see other humans interacting like such on social media, and not just platitudes and hooks and the usual stuff that you see on social media that only aims for virality and numbers and vanity metrics and whatnot.
Bailey, welcome back.
It's funny you say that. Me and Christian, we kind of took over your post before this kind of initiated conversation. Do you remember that, Christian? Which was so fun, and I can't remember what he called it. It transitioned into our whole Wayne and Gar thing that we're doing now. But I always wanted to, with algorithm changes and stuff like that, while I have it on my head, and I don't want to derail, it's just a quick question. So, let's say we comment 20 times and you get all that traction. Is it still beneficial? Even from your linked ads, from any kind of post on LinkedIn in general as a whole, right? I don't know if it still is or not. I've never Googled it. I know it was super amazing before, but things change.
It is amazing, but it doesn't. I don't know that it has changed. I think it matters. What matters there, it's not how many engagements you get, but from who. So there are profiles that every interaction, or most of the interactions they do on LinkedIn, get shown to a bigger portion of their audience than for other creators. So let's say you comment on someone's post. There's going to be accounts that get that engagement to be shown to a certain percentage of their audience, and some that will get it shown to a bigger percentage of their audience. And that has to do with how active they are and how loyal their audience is. So if you have an audience that doesn't engage with you in the first place, most of your engagements won't drive traffic to the people that you engage with. Whereas if you're someone who's active on the platform, you have a loyal audience, you're DMing with people. DMs are really key. If you're in someone's DMs, you're in someone's feed. That's a rule. That's it. And vice versa, right? So that's to bear in mind. But yeah, as I was saying, if you're someone that's active, that has a loyal audience base, that's on their audience DMs and whatnot, most of the engagements or the interactions that you do on LinkedIn will get shown to a bigger portion of your audience. And that's, as a creator, who you want engagements from. Those kind of people who have a loyal. I know that, for example, when I post clips with certain people, I get way more engagement than I do when I post clips with other people. It's just, I'm not gonna name anyone, but it is like that, right? So you just gotta identify who those people are in your sphere of influence and try to get as close to them as possible to help you grow in a way, not without being cheesy or anything, but yeah.
And so how would you recommend if people are just starting, because you had mentioned a little earlier that it took you months and months of posting, say, before you began to find any traction. What would you say to someone who wants to step up their LinkedIn game? What would be like 3 key, especially in oil and gas, what would be 3 key takeaways that someone could do on their LinkedIn?
Well, look, for me, I think it was partially leveling up in competence, what made me gain traction, to be honest. I think at the beginning when I started posting, it was more so about like, hey, let's start posting about this, because now we're doing, we shifted from working with business owners and podcasters and whatnot to more like established companies in B2B, different B2B industries, mostly software and others. And so that took us to LinkedIn, and starting on LinkedIn was a whole different thing. I came from building on Twitter. I had an audience there of 1,500 followers, so that was already some experience in creating content on a daily basis. But when I got into LinkedIn, it was just more so me growing as a professional and learning more about the space and getting in touch with the creators and thought leaders in the space there on LinkedIn. What then drove more traction down the line, I think. Now, when it comes to starting off as an oil and gas person, I don't think competence is an issue in that case, and right? Like if you've been in your industry for long enough, you probably have a thing or two to say about it, and you probably have enough. You're well versed enough to not have a problem as to what should I talk about. That's why I would encourage people to not ask, why should I be talking about, but rather look inside and look at all of the experience, all of the insights, all of the opinions that you already have that you can share that will be really valuable to the right people. When doing so, you just got to know how to talk the language of your target audience, right? So speak the language that they like to hear and that they understand and that touches them. Sometimes it's hard, but if you do enough research, I wanted to attract B2B marketers, right? And for me, that meant start listening to the podcast that they listen on a daily basis. Start following the people that they follow on a daily basis, engage with their stuff, know what they are talking about, what questions are they asking in private communities that they hang around in, that kind of stuff. I got really deep. And that led me to what led me, right? Like, and that's what I think everyone should do. Like, because otherwise, organically, you're not going to get to the right people if you don't do that. You need to immerse yourself and dive really deep into their world so that it becomes yours. Because if you're not in the same world, then how are you going to connect, right? The fact that it feels like you're close in social media, but there's really a work that you need to do behind that to really get close to someone in social media, right? To speak the same language, use the same words, talk in the same way, know about references that they make, acronyms, that kind of stuff. Every industry has their own. And, someone that comes from oil and gas, I don't think would have a problem with that. But based on their target, they should really ask themselves that question. Because then if not, then organic is not for you. And I get that you don't want to do that work. But then another thing that you have that is not time, it's money, right? Some people have money, some people have time. If you have time, go organic. If you have money, you need to be paid. That's it. Like, there's no other way around it. And for most people in big industries or with big companies or executives and whatnot, they probably have more money than time, and that's why they should get them paid other than organic, because the organic game, it's a full-time job, and it's not something you can outsource or put on pilot. That's for sure.
I'm so glad you touched on that, because one thing people always ask me, they're like, how'd you get so many followers? How do you get so interactive? And I was like, what you get in is what you put out. It's that simple in one sentence. If what you want out of it, you're going to have to put just as much into it. It goes hand in hand, but trying to get people to focus a little bit of their time is challenging. So I think what you offer is huge, right? The return is immense, because they know. I think a lot of people over the past few years have wanted to get to a way more interactive spot on such as LinkedIn, but just haven't put in the effort, and how can they do that with someone such as yourself?
Totally. I mean, one of the things that I'm the most proud of with FounderVideo is what we started doing fairly early, when a lot of people weren't doing it, and now there's a lot of people doing it. But because it's a great strategy, it works. And I'm not saying we necessarily invented it, but we're definitely early to it. And it's the guided interviews. It's people call it the private podcast, the dark podcasts, the just recording sessions, or call it as you wish. But we call it guided interviews, and we stick to that name because it makes sense. It's basically sessions that, you hop on Riverside, just like we are right now, and you bring a set of questions, and you let an executive or a CEO produce maybe 15 to 30 pieces of video content in a 1 hour session, right out the gate. And they don't need to see you in an entire month after that, because you can split those out and schedule them for them and whatnot. And that enables for, frictionless content production, but it doesn't enable for the growth that organic can give you if you're deep in the platform. That's the truth. So what we figured is that, okay, we're not getting them results with organic. They won't spend the time that they need to in order to get growth from organic, but they do need growth, and they want growth. And they want people coming to them, and they want the right people consuming their content and interacting with them. We know we can make that content good enough, but without their input in organic, we're not going to be able to reach those people. So what can we do to guarantee that distribution? Well, LinkedIn ads. I learned the platform fairly quickly, thanks to, some consulting and paid courses and stuff. But it's a really tough platform, I have to say. It's really a whole different world than everything you've ever seen, like on Google or Facebook. Way more complex. There's a real media buying component. You need to know the ins and outs and the technicalities of it. Frequency, campaign structure, creative rotation, a bunch of landmines that LinkedIn will put you to spend more. Know how to avoid those. Not going to get into the weeds here, but we learned the platform, and now we're able to make that promise of like, hey, we'll create content that we know will work better than what you're doing right now, and we'll show it to the right people so that it has the impact that you want it to have. It will take more, it will take less, depending on the current maturity of the marketing ecosystem that they may have. But that's what's needed these days to win, based on the time and money that most B2B companies dispose of, including oil and gas people.
Brilliant.
That's huge. Yeah, I mean, it's way more than I knew. It's funny, yeah, because like the number one question is how do you even do it, Because, I mean, you can't just click and do a paid ad. It's not as friendly as that. So it's interesting to know. I mean, obviously we didn't get too into the weeds, but a weed's enough for me that I don't. What? You got me lost.
But Bailey, you had done some really great research prior to coming on today, and I know you had spoken with a couple of people, and you gathered some comments and some questions. Do you want to share some of that with us, and who you spoke to, and what you got?
I did actually. Reached out to probably just 20 CEOs, COOs, founders, etc. People that I knew, and I was like, hey, we're doing this podcast. Do you have any questions you might want to ask? And I picked a couple here. Let me look them up here on my old cellular telly. All right. First question: Jake Foster, CEO of Curb Pumps and Flow Valve. His question was, how much time do they devote to LinkedIn communicating their brand and company culture? Do they see a net benefit that correlates to time and results? Will, ready?
Yeah, I mean, there is definitely a benefit that correlates to time and results. I don't think I fully get the question, but I think I do, like, in a way. So how much time do you need to make this work, if we put it simply, right?
That's how I get it.
So in the model that we just described with what we do with clients, not that much. We take most of that off their plates. But if you were to do it alone, then, fair amount of time. Just to put you an example, for myself at least, I spend, I would say, at least 5 or 6, probably even around, I don't count it, but 6 to 8 hours a week on content things. Probably even more. Yeah. Oh, wow. It's not that much when you actually count it. It's not like a full-time thing necessarily, because I have really good workflows. We have an editing team. I don't need to edit anything. We have a bunch of source from our own podcast, my guest appearances, and our own guided interviews that my partner and I do every now and then. Now less often, because we have a bunch of podcasts to pull clips from. That's why part of the reason we started a podcast ourselves, because it was such a great strategy. Like, hey, we get to talk to the industry leaders. That will give us more authority. At the same time, we can give them clips to have a taste of our service and know that we're competent. And if they need to recommend someone, they might. Hasn't happened yet, to be honest, but that's kind of like the idea. And on top of that, we get footage that we can use for ourselves, because I also talk in the podcast, of course. And so, yeah, it was a really great strategy. But, and that enables us to spend less time on content. Also, if you have some like things organized, we have it all in Airtable. It's a project management software. You can have, I have tables with all of the questions that we touched on in all of our guided interviews. I have a table with all of the clips and the LinkedIn, the copy that I use for the post on LinkedIn, with the transcript of the clip right on the other side, so I can like read the clip instead of having to watch it to prepare the copy. Then I mark them as scheduled posts or whatever it may be, if they're in revision or anything. And that is how kind of I organize my content calendar. I usually schedule the entire week ahead on Saturdays or Sundays, and that's about it. It doesn't take as much if you have a proper workflow. But and I think, I would argue that every company, including people in the oil and gas industry, like, every company has the resources to build this type of workflow. It's not expensive. It doesn't take much time. You can make it work like clockwork in no time if you hire the right people. And software or tech stack wise, you just need a couple tools. Like for recording video, for example, I'm using right now my iPhone 13, a Rode mic, which is less than a couple $100, and then Riverside is $30 a month. There you go. You have high quality content for really low price, right? Like you don't need to spend 40,000 on 10 videos for a production team to come and shoot.
But some people will. Oh, go Bailey, please.
No, for sure. No, go ahead, Mr. Lombardini, the man, the myth, the legend. Give us,
brother.
Thank
you very much. Well, see, but part of it is, you're right, is there, and this kind of slips back a little bit to what I was talking about, imposter syndrome, right? Because the barrier to entry is also very low. And when you have a low barrier to entry, we'll welcome you back, Bailey. When you have a low barrier to entry, you'll have more players in the game, right? So the more expensive it is on the front end to ramp up a business, the less businesses like that you're going to have. So more podcasts come out because, like you say, it's not expensive to get a mic. It's not expensive to get a camera and, pay whatever your streaming platform of choice is. But the question then goes more to mindset, and that there has to be someone in the organization that recognizes and understands the value of consistently putting out this content if that fits within their strategy paradigm. Because you can have some executives say, well, we need a LinkedIn, and then just hire someone to do LinkedIn. But what does that even mean? Because if you don't have the right strategy, then your name is out there, but what were you aiming for? So I think that having proper mental buy-in, because like you say, this is a different landscape from everything else. And even the socials, and LinkedIn in particular, as being, unique as a B2B, that algorithm is also very particular. So you really do need to have someone who is willing to say, I'm giving up to this process because this is a process that demands its own respect if I want to use it properly. Does that sound about right?
Totally. I mean, just look at what it has done for other companies. One person that I follow religiously at this point, we had him in the podcast, Chris Walker. He grew, he's doing the same stuff that I'm doing right now as a founder. And, of course, he's not the only one. I'm not the only one. There's a bunch of other people doing it. But it's the playbook we're talking about, right? Creating content, being accessible on social media as a CEO, and putting your face out there and being consistent with it, and having a content engine that works, not without you, of course, but that works like clockwork, right? And Chris Walker grew from having just one $5,000 client a month in 2019 with his agency to grow it to like multiple 8 figures in revenue a year. Like I think they did up to close to 20 million, if I'm not mistaken, in 2023 or 2022. I don't know. Don't quote me on the numbers, but about that. And I talked to him in the podcast, and one of the things he said, like one of the biggest lever that I pulled in order to grow Refine Labs to that extent and so fast, which was the agency, like the highest growth B2B agency or something like that in America. It was, the marketing strategy execution of podcasts to LinkedIn video content live event to podcast to content to video content on LinkedIn. Having that flywheel working for years pays off.
Right.
It definitely does. And sure, you got to have something in you. You got to have that buy-in and that charisma in a way, and that ability to communicate. But hey, nobody is born with that. I mean, sure, some people are more inclined to do better and whatnot, but it's something my English was not this good when I started doing content in English. You know what I mean? And I'm Spanish, of course. It's my second language. You get better over time. It's just like everything. If you commit to it, you can become your best version if you commit to it. And that's kind of like the message that I would give to anyone trying to starting out in content and kind of like getting that buy-in to make it work.
Bailey, what else you got, brother, man? I know you had
Lance Nearby, CEO Montana Silversmith. Try to switch it up, not all necessarily oil and gas. His question was, all comes back to ROI. Can LinkedIn actually provide data that can be traced down to an actual purchase of a producer, or is it more of the same old gray area of ad spending? Because what if we didn't ... You like that? Yeah, I think it's extra touch of pizzazz.
It's a really great question and one that we get often, so I know how to answer it. Yes, LinkedIn can provide enough data for you to trace down an ad impression to a conversion and a purchase if you have the proper system to track that. There's tools that can help you with this. Fibbler, it helps now with company level identification. Sync it to Salesforce and HubSpot to see, at the account level, hey, okay, this company has this many impressions with LinkedIn ads, and therefore the deal stage has changed in the past 4 weeks, and in those 4 weeks there has been this many touch points. Well, there you go. That's impact right there, proved. There's also tools more advanced and fancy like Hockey Stack, which is sort of expensive, but for attribution, there's nothing better than that. And you can literally map out the whole customer journey, connecting your CRM data, website data, and ads platforms data all in one to, have full visibility over every touch point. Really great tool. And also, but at the end of the day, I gotta be honest, if you're running our playbook with thought leader ads and, providing an experience that feels natural to buyers, the truth is, a lot of people won't even remember that they have seen an ad. And if they do, they might just say that it's LinkedIn. So not only do you have to have self-reported attribution installed in your contact forms, like the usual question, how did you hear about us? Required free form field, and then you can integrate the data in buckets with simple automation. But also in sales calls and everywhere when you talk to customers, you got to be proactively asking where did they come from and actually like taking it out of them, because a lot of times they might not know at first. And if you let them go with, I don't really know, and you don't want to bother with them, you don't want to bother them with that, then you're really not going to know what's working and what's not. But if you really want to know what's working and what's not, then just ask and ask proactively and consistently. That's the best way to tell. And look, a lot of times, if it's working well enough, you won't need any attribution tool to tell you that. The market will.
that's what I was thinking, right? Yeah, the results will show themselves, so to speak.
Right.
No, that's good.
Yeah, you will get him. That's what happened to me. I didn't track necessarily how, we got 6 deals in when we started spending on LinkedIn ads. I just knew because they came inbound on DM. They tell me, I saw your post. I saw your this, and that. And they were all creatives that we were running as thought leader ads. I was like, okay, well, it's clearly working. There's no other way around it. And look, it won't happen as fast. To us, it happened really fast. But again, I have to say, like, it really depends on the maturity of your marketing ecosystem, how much content is out there from your company, how much goodwill you've built, how much authority can you portray in your space based on the people that your audience can associate you with. That kind of stuff matters a lot. And so yeah, you gotta bear that in mind. But yeah, that would be my answer to. I don't want to go in circles, but yeah.
I guess last but not least, and then I threw in a content creator just to kind of see his input. JP Warren, founder of Exec Crew and Connection Crew. His quote unquote message to my question was, "Hey now, drop down. How about how to and why to build your personal brand?" types of content and engagement to provide on your platform? Boom.
Great question.
Really great. Yeah. I think we've sort of touched on it, but to put it all in an answer, basically, at the very beginning, you want to make it easy for yourself. So on LinkedIn, you can start with text-based posts, 3 a week, 4 per week, ramp up to 1 daily if you can. And just, as we said, express what you're really going through, what you've learned, things that people that have been 10 plus years in an industry, they have content ideas for 2 years if they think deeply enough. That's the truth, right? So that I don't think is the biggest question. Then format-wise, as I said, text is fine to start with. Then you can start playing with video. You can play with carousels that work pretty well, and they're really super easy to create these days with templates and whatnot. And engagement-wise, which is, to be honest, someone could argue even a more important part than the content that you put out. Most importantly, when you're starting out, because if you think about it, what's the point of putting out content if there's nobody to see it? If you don't have enough connections, if you don't have an audience, you shouldn't be focusing on creating content. You should be focusing on engagement, on engaging with the right people. So that's why I said, start up with only 2-3 posts per week, maybe 4 if you want to, just to test yourself out. But bear in mind that nothing will happen at the beginning, and your most important activity is engagement. How do you engage? Naturally, without AI, and actually being mindful. Going through your feed and dedicating consistently 1 hour. 30 minutes is good enough. You can just do 5-10 actions per day. Comments, likes. I wouldn't count it as an action. I think it needs to be comments. And then send out connection requests every day. There's software to automate this. You can run a pretty targeted campaign to a list of contacts on Autopilot with software like HeyReach, Expandy.io, and others. But I would encourage you to do it manually, because you get to choose more, and it forces you to be consistent with it. If you do that for 3 months in a row, daily, you stick with it, I would be surprised that nothing's going to happen. It's happening to you, right? It's just how it works. It's a matter of numbers and consistency. So if you do it, it will. And if you want to go faster, just go, do 20 comments a day. It shouldn't take you more than an hour if you're, fast with it, and you don't write like 3 paragraphs per comment. You just, casually. But and in the comments, there's a nuance here. Just last thing I want to add: you don't want to say or paraphrase what's in the post. You want to be adding something to the conversation, bringing in your own personal experience, bringing in references, make a joke, I don't know, something new. But just don't say what has been said in AI words just to comment.
I was going to say, add value, don't copy the whole paragraph, put it in AI and put the response. Right. You can tell when somebody does it.
Totally. You can really tell. And look, I feel bad when I get those type of comments, because I'm like, I feel like deleting this, it doesn't look good in my post. You know what I mean? So don't do it. Yeah.
So but it's funny because in the end, we've touched on 4 or 5 different subjects that really in the end, the base was the same. Be a human being, be a human being, be a decent human being. Let's throw that into it. Be a decent human being and act that way. That's all that you need, really. Right?
I was about to say, when you asked me before, about the ROI and everything, compared to other platforms regarding paid, it needs to be said that LinkedIn is just not a transactional platform like Google can be or Facebook can be.
Agreed.
It's a platform for B2B. You need to work on it. You need to, you need to plant seeds if you want to harvest at some point, right? That's about it. But I think it works like that with every organic side of every social media platform, right? And it just so happens that on LinkedIn, even with paid, it's the same way. Yeah. And that's what a lot of people don't realize. They think, because I'm paying, I need to get results. Give me leads month 1, But it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. Especially, unless you have audiences that already know about you, are qualified and engaged with your stuff from Google or Facebook, and you can then, filter them down on LinkedIn with their filters to really get the people that you want. Then you're starting off from retargeting already. You have audiences built. Then you may get some results in as little as 30 days. But if not, it will take more because you need to build that audience up in order to retarget them. The money is in the retargeting. Again, I don't want to get too deep into the weeds of LinkedIn Ads Paid, but it's it's a whole vast array of topics there and things that need to be debunked. So yeah, just wanted to throw that out. Now that you mentioned, being human and everything, it's part of the conversation.
Interesting. A question that I had real quick was when you were talking about your guided interviews and you sit down, you sit for 1 hour and then you can extract a lot of content. My question is this: do you have a traditional podcast format and then you extract quotes, or is it question number 1, response number 1, break? Question number 2, response number 2, break, etc.
It's more of a traditional podcast format. We like to treat it as a natural conversation. And I gotta be honest, for most clients, we always provide the questions way in advance for them to review and add and remove and whatever it may be. But with some really good clients, sometimes you don't even need to write the questions because you're gonna be full of insights, and one thing will lead to another, and that's the beauty of it. And that's where the best clips come out from. The clients that wanna script it more, have it more, I know I want to make these points and everything. Sure, it might come up more polished and everything, but that's not necessarily better at all times, right? Again, I don't criticize anyone for their way of doing things and how they feel comfortable recording content, but I do judge results, and results speak for themselves. So, right. That's what my experience tells me.
Quality
I want to keep it
quantity.
natural.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's right.
And that's the same with my show, that I do not feel forced to have to put an episode out every week. And I'm not going to do that. And I'm not going to make the content suffer. I'm not going to make my audience have to suffer because I put an arbitrary thing on myself. I would rather put 2 out a month, but those 2 are real bangers, as opposed to, oh, he put out 10, but they're all trash. I mean, I don't see the ROI on that.
Totally.
Bailey, what else you got for us, buddy?
That's why
sorry.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that quality over quantity. That's why we used to offer way more clips to clients. Now we offer way less because we realized it's more so about having the right stuff. And most people would churn because they had too many videos and couldn't post them. So we figured hey, let's just do less, right? And
right.
better.
There's one thing I would add, and I was going to do a short video on it maybe today or something, but it's something I think people need to hear, and hopefully they listen to this. Turn on your notifications for LinkedIn. I don't know how many times I'll tag somebody, and they're like, I need this now, right? And I'll tag 5 people, and then 2 days later, they're like, oh, I can help you. All right, dude, it was, if you had your phone notifications on, it'd say, hey, Bailey tagged you and said he can sell you this product. Please, I cannot stress this enough. You guys are missing tons of opportunity. Easy ones, because I try to go out of my way to help people in that aspect, right? And a lot of people do. So I think it's crucial, for people to keep in mind that just because you haven't got something in 2 months doesn't mean you're not going to get something at 9 o'clock tonight or whatever the case may be.
No, totally. I mean, if you wanna make the most, you wouldn't turn off the notifications from your email if you're doing email outbound campaigns, right? It's
right.
obvious. This is the same thing. You want to be in the know at all times. Everything is moving at all times. Always.
Yeah.
So.
No, I can't stress how many times I was just so lucky that I happened to be sitting in front of my computer. I happened to have LinkedIn open. I can tell you there's 4 times specifically that I was at the right place at the right time. I made the first comment, I made the first move, and it would not have happened had I not been, all about it. So no. And it's like anything else, right? Like you said, if you're going to invest, you have to take the time to really invest. And that includes, like you say, if you're going to be doing ad campaigns, be on top of it. If you've made comments to people, well, then, turn on your notifications so you can see how that's going to evolve, especially if you want to take that seriously and take that little snowflake and grow it into a snowball. Right, Bailey?
Oh, yeah. I love that. I love that correlation, snowflake to snowball. I'm going to have to borrow that one.
Run it.
There was only one other thing I was going to touch base on, and it's going to take us down a rabbit hole, so we're not going to touch on it, but how about a yes or no from you, Will?
Next
LinkedIn
episode.
Or X? Because you just did a podcast, so I know it's hot on top of your mind. Which one's better, blah, blah, blah. Ready to go.
Yeah, I just put out a post today about it. Well, look, there's ups and pros and cons of each. I would say, like, for oil and gas people, LinkedIn all the way. And X is just such a different vibe. I used to build on X. I have an audience there, and I from time to time post a thing or two, but not that active. And it's just because the quality of the content that it's easy to find on LinkedIn, it's miles away. Like it's nowhere near than what you usually find easily on X. Not to say that there's not quality content on X, but it's the ocean, the haystack where you need to find the needle. It's full of other stuff that you might not want to see. LinkedIn is way more professional, way more. Sometimes bottomed up, and I think sometimes that's a bad thing, but a lot of times that's a good thing. It prevents people from being too obnoxious or outrageous or no filter type stuff.
Agreed.
And I think that in a way, in a professional context, it can make people put out their best selves. At least it did for me. Right. The fact that you only, you can only usually, people only post once per day on LinkedIn, whereas on X it's way more common to do like 15 tweets a day or stuff like that. And you can, have half of them be like BS and that doesn't matter. But on LinkedIn, if you get a post wrong, it feels bad. And it's not like it's because you get less chances at it. And it forces you again to refine your writing, to add more value, to be more competent, to talk with better people. Like for me, what it has done is that it's basically like, well, okay, if I want to penetrate this market, I need to get way, way, way better. And I did, in a way. I like to think, right? There's still a long way to go, but yeah, and that's why I would choose LinkedIn every day, to be honest.
That's pretty straightforward. And
that's what I'm talking about.
That's awesome. And so do you think maybe, Will, that maybe in maybe in a little bit, in a couple of weeks or another month and change, maybe we can have another little visit and we can revisit these topics and maybe build on, and if we can get some audience involvement with some more questions, some more thoughts, and we can build it into the next one, and maybe even continue this as a small separate mini series. What do you guys say?
I think it's wonderful.
Totally.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah. If the audience is up for it and would like to get deep into the weeds, which you have mentioned before many times, right? Like I'm super down for that.
Super.
For sure. We'll need to.
Yeah, Bailey loves taking us into the weeds, don't you, Bailey?
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm not even gonna fill up the gas tank on the old weed eater or the lawnmower. We're just gonna let it grow.
There you go. Well, gentlemen,
the niche analogy right there.
What a way to go. Gentlemen, Will Martin, FounderVideo, Lord Bailey, Midkiff, Pulsation Performance Control, Christian Lombardini, Oil Field Leader. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you very much. What an amazing, insightful conversation. Join us back on the next time. You're not going to hear this kind of stuff from anywhere else. I can promise you that. Thank you. See you on the next one.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the FounderVideo podcast with Will Martin, and we'll see you on the next episode.